Alright guys, me again. So now I'll be looking at the second endgame in Jesus de la Villa's 100 endgames you must know. So the chapters are done, the series of 100 endgames, the chapters are done with several examples under each chapter heading. So here we've got 9 examples to show you, which are all around a similar theme. So this position is white to play and draw in this position, and what we're going to see in the following end games is the importance of getting your king when you have the pawn versus the opponent's king to one of these 3 squares, but crucially your own pawn needs to be behind this line. Here in this position, black's pawn is too far advanced, and to make matters worse, it's a pawn on the edge of the board, which makes it slightly harder to win. So in this position, white to play and draw. The drawing move is king h1, and the problem black has is now the move they'd like to play is king to f2 in order to protect these 3 squares, which will drive the pawn to the promotion square. But this is now stalemate. White has no way of moving. All of these g1 square, the g2 square, and the h2 square are guarded by black, so this is stalemate. If black pushes the pawn, as I said, the white king simply goes to g1, and now black, in order to keep this pawn defended, has to go to g3, and the position is a draw. So the problem is that white here has the opposition. It's diagonal opposition, and we'll develop that idea in the following examples, and in the next lecture as well. And black has no option but to give stalemate here. So in the second example, and this is a slightly tricky one, we're going to learn about the opposition in this position. So it's black to move here, and white has the opposition. What the opposition means, if I haven't explained already, is to have the 2 kings opposing one another, and whoever's move it is doesn't have the opposition. So here it's black to move, that means white has the opposition. Actually, in this example, it doesn't actually matter who has the opposition. This would be white to move no matter who had the move, whether it was white to move or black to move. I'll show you the position with white to move in the next example. But with black to move, just to give a few examples of how the game could develop. If the king goes to g8, white just follows him and keeps the opposition. Keeps the king opposed to the black king with black to move. If the king were to play a move like this, now black's outside of the square, as we learned in the last video. And now the pawn just runs through. So the trickier example is king to f8. And again, white follows him. And now if black goes to king e8, white can't follow the black king here. He can't keep the opposition, but he doesn't need to. He can play a pawn to e7. And now naturally, obviously, the black king can't regain the opposition by going to f8 because the pawn guards that square. So after king to d7, white plays king to f7. And this is an important winning concept that you're going to need to remember. Getting the king to the 7th rank next to your pawn, with the white pawn either on the 7th rank or the 6th rank. The king guards all these squares, and there's no way for black to stop the white pawn promoting. So here's the same position again, same position as the last position, but with white to move. And here, the only winning move is king to f5. Now obviously black has the opposition in this position. After playing king to f5, black can't retain the opposition. Retaining the opposition would mean playing king to f7, as obviously the white pawn guards that square. So now black has this. essentially transposes to the previous example. After king g8, the simplest way to win is king g6, winning the opposition again. Retain the opposition. King t8, you play e7. The black king's forced. The only legal move for black is here. And again, you get your king to the 7th rank, side long to the e7 pawn, and you guard these 3 squares. There'll be no way of black stopping the promotion here. And then the other example, of course, black could play this move, and again, you keep the opposition. You face your opponent's king, and the black king is forced to move to the side. If they go here, it's the same position again. And if they go here, it's an easier win. Black can't stop the promotion square. Can't guard the promotion square. These 2 squares are blocked off for the black king. Here, a similar idea to the last position. With black to move, the trickiest move for white to face here is king a7, when black's just won the opposition. But again, as we saw in the last example, white has king to b5. And here, black cannot regain the opposition, as the pawn guards that square. So wherever the black king goes, the white king follows them. Now this example has slightly trickier nuance to it, because after king a8, you can't immediately play pawn to c7, as this is stalemate. You have to watch out for these little tricks when you have a pawn on the side. But it's very easy to win for white. You play king to c7, and again you get this position with the king on the 7th rank guarding 3 squares, and the pawn can go straight through to promotion. Here with white's play is an easier way to win. You can immediately gain the opposition. After this sequence of moves, you got to remember not to play c7 due to stalemate. And you get here again. We saw in the first example, I believe, after if black plays king facing the pawn, because you had the opposition here, once you've lost the opposition, you can push your pawn and black can't regain the opposition here. And again, you get your side long king position. So in this position, whether white can win or black can win depends very much on who has the move. If black has the move, as you can see here, if they go to king f8, the trickiest move, white can't follow, he can't get the opposition, but he can push the pawn. And the black king is forced out. You get your side long position again. With white to move, this position's a draw, unfortunately, as after pushing the pawn, the king goes to f8, and unfortunately this is stalemate. So in this position, you don't actually want the opposition. You want to be able to lose the opposition by the black king moving there first, as in this example, and then you force the king out. In this position, with white to move, unfortunately, after you lose the opposition, to regain the opposition, you have to give stalemate, unfortunately. Black can't go to either one of these 2 squares. So the important nuance to remember. Once you're in this position, with the king and the pawn next to each other on the 6th rank, you need to have the opposition in order to win. It needs to be black's move for you to win this position. If the pawn was on the 5th rank here, then it wouldn't matter who had the opposition, as we'll see in later examples. And again here, this is a draw here. because black wins the opposition, and after f7, white is forced to regain the opposition if he wants to defend the pawn. And again, it's a stalemate. All of these squares are guarded. In this position, however, with white to move, because they have the opposition, so to speak, here. If king could move here, white would have the opposition. It would be black's move and had to move. But instead of doing that, you can push the pawn. So you lose the opposition at the final hurdle by pushing the pawn, and the black king can't regain. It can't go to any of these four squares even. The black king is forced out. And again, you get your sidelong king position. Your king on the 7th rank, defending the pawn on the side, guarding all these 3 squares, and importantly, the promotion square. So that's your basic pawn and king endgame. Cheers.